And we are live. All right, welcome back, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. It's so wonderful to be here at the Thinking Talmudist. We're going to do a small piece of Talmud, continuing the previous Talmud that we talked about, Titus, and we talked about all of the details previously mentioned in the Talmud here in Gittin 57a. We're in the middle of the page. The Talmud now says a very interesting story about one of the cities, one of the towns that was laid to waste by the Romans. Rav Manyomi bar Chilkiah and Rav Chilkiah bar Tovia and Rav Huna bar Chia Yasve Gabi Adodi. They were sitting together. Amrei, they said, I iko deshmiele milsa mikfar Sekania shel Mitzrayim lema. If anybody has heard anything about the residents of Kfar Sekania in Egypt, we want to hear from him. Pasachad minayu v'amar, one of them started to speak, and he said, Maase ba'orus u'ba'arusaso shenishbu levein ha'ovdim kochavim. There was an incident where a man and his engaged wife, his betrothed wife, from that town were captured by idolaters. V'yisiyum zelazeh, and their captors wed them to one another. Amrulo, his wife said to him, to her now new husband, she said, I ask you not to touch me. Why? Because I don't have a ketubah from you. Ketubah is the contract, the ketubah. I don't have the marriage contract. And as the Torah teaches us, if you don't have a marriage contract, you cannot be with a woman, with that woman. V'lo noga ba ad yomosa, and he did not touch her until the day of his death. And when he died, she told those assembled at the funeral, Sipru, eulogize this man. Shepitpet beyitzro yoser mi Yosef. He vanquished his desire in a trial that was more severe than even that of Joseph. Di'ilu Yosef lo hava elo chad shata. We know that Joseph's trial happened only once. The Talmud says it was actually every day. It was a daily thing. We mentioned it previously in our Parsha podcast. So Joseph had to overcome the challenge, the temptation, once. V'hai kol yoma v'yoma, whereas he, this, my husband, overcame this challenge every single day. V'ilu Yosef lav b'chadamita. He says, furthermore, Joseph and the woman who was trying to seduce him didn't sleep in one bed together. They didn't sleep in the same room. V'hai b'chadamita. And we slept in one bed. And yet, he was tempted every single day to be with me, and he wasn't. V'ilu Yosef lav ishto. And Yosef was not married to that woman who was trying to seduce him, but v'ha ishto. But whereas my husband was married to me. Pasach idach v'amar. Okay, so this is the story. I want to talk about a few things, few aspects of this story. Number one, let's give some background of knowledge so we can understand what's happening here. The first thing is that the Torah tells us that a man who is married can only be with his wife if they have a ketubah, if they have a contract. There's no such thing as a one-night stand, and there's no such thing as kicking the tires before you buy the car. None of this happens in Judaism, okay? This is, the Torah clearly tells us you need to marry a woman in order to be with her, okay? A man can marry a woman just because he wants to be with her. Fine, that's you do, okay? But there's a proper way that things can be done. It's an amazing thing. If you look at the blessing that we recite under the chuppah, it's really special. When we look at it and we see and understand how the Torah deals with us. So listen to this amazing blessing. Under the chuppah it says, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us regarding forbidden unions. Asher al aroyos v'asalanu esarusos, and forbade betrothed women to us. V'hitir lanu esanesuos lanu al yidei chuppah v'kedushin, and permitted women who are married to us through canopy and consecration. That means there's a proper way to do things. This way is forbidden, this way is permitted. So this man goes through an entire lifetime. I'll tell you that one of the amazing things that you will find in every Torah observant home is that the master bedroom doesn't have one bed. The master bedroom has two beds. Why? Because there are times that a husband and wife cannot sleep in the same bed together. Why is that? The Torah says that a man cannot be with his wife when she is a nida. We talked about this in other classes. We're not going to get into it in too much detail here. But the concept is that there's certain times of the month that a husband and wife cannot be together. What do you mean? I'm married to her. I can do whatever I want. It's true. The Torah says there's times in which, by the way, I believe is the secret to preserving relationships. The gift of a relationship is when it's not always available. I'll give you an example. An example I came up with many, many years ago. So imagine this guy graduates high school, top of his class, and his rich uncle calls him and he says to him, Joe, I'm so proud of you. I want you to come to the house. I have a surprise for you. Congratulations on your graduation. So, okay, Uncle Joe comes to Uncle Joe's house. Be there at 3 o'clock. He comes at 3 o'clock. Uncle Joe clicks the garage door opener, opens up the garage, and he has a beautiful new convertible. He says, what's this? He says, this is a gift for you. This is a gift for you that you can have. It's yours on condition that as soon as I ask you to bring it back, you bring it back. You pull it into no questions asked. He says, what? But I can have, you can do whatever you want with this. This is your car. This is your gift. But as soon as I ask for it back, you need to bring it back in the driveway, no questions asked. And when I tell you you can have it back, you can have it back. Deal? Deal. No problem. Goes out and all his friends, this beautiful new convertible, they're so excited. He can pick up anybody he wants. It's amazing. It's just like it's like a dream come true. What else does a teenager want than the most attractive car out there? So he's going, having a great time, picking up everybody, doing whatever he does. And one day, in the middle of all that, he gets a phone call from his uncle. He says, uh-oh. Uncle says, in 30 minutes, I want it back in my garage. 30. What? Remember what I said? No questions asked. Comes, he brings the car back, puts it in the driveway. The uncle takes the keys, closes the garage door. He says, come back in 7 days at 12 o'clock. It's yours. Let me ask you a question. What do you think is going on in that teenager's mind for the next 7 days? The first day is like not so bad. The next day is like, and then it starts building up that excitement, that eagerness to get back to my new car. It's my car, my baby. I want my car back, right? As soon as 11:59 hits, 7 days later, he's by that garage door for that garage door to open up so that he can drive his car again. That excitement can live on for a very, very long time. Let me tell you the contrast of that. The flip side of that. A friend of mine bought a very special, very unique Mercedes. And I remember exactly where we were in the coffee shop on Westheimer when he said, because we used to learn in his house, he says, no. I want you to see the car. You're not going to see the car in my driveway in my garage. I want you to see it public. I want you to see how people look at this car. So we're sitting there, and he's wearing this fedora, and he's wearing this car. I'm like, what? And this guy's been in jeans and t-shirt every time I met him. Like, what's going on? He says, oh, it has to match the car, Comes out, and we're sitting there, and he's looking at the car with such admiration. He says, look how beautiful this car is. Look how beautiful. And he just couldn't even drink his coffee there at the Starbucks. He's just like, Rabbi, I got to take you on a drive in this car. This is the most incredible car. You have to come into this car. That's fine. We go into the car, and he's showing me the beautiful trimmings and the light and all the lights, and the inside is just so incredible. It's like, wow. So we get to the first light, and this car pulls up next to us. I think it was a Jaguar or something. And he looks at that car and he says, maybe I should have gotten that car. I said, are you crazy? You just spent so much money. You flew to Germany to drive this car from the factory on the Autobahn. They had it wrapped up and packaged and shipped back to the United States for you. And now after all of that, you're looking at other cars? But that's what happens when we have things and we don't take it away. In order to preserve a freshness, you have to take it away. That's the nature of humanity. Things become dull. Things become stale. Even the most beautiful wife in the world, if you don't take it away, and this is the gift that's embedded into a Jewish home, where, for 12 days, you're not going to sleep in the same bed. When she goes back to the mikvah, it's that excitement. The Talmud says, like a bride and groom anew. It's like a honeymoon 12 times a year. That's what keeps a Jewish marriage fresh. It keeps it fresh. It keeps it spicy. It keeps it on. It keeps it, successful, with anticipation, and that it doesn't become dull. I remember when I was looking to buy our home in Houston when we moved here over 20 years ago. So the guy who we were buying the house from said that, he says, you can trust me 100%. Everything is kosher. This was a kosher kitchen. He says, we're very, very, very stringent on Jewish law. And we're looking around. We look at the kitchen. He says, this is the dairy side. This is the meat side. And this is he was very, very meticulous about everything. And then I come to his bedroom, and he has this giant California king bed there, and there's no second bed. I'm like, what in the world is he talking about, right? If he's not keeping the laws of family purity, So then as we continue looking at the other rooms, and he says, and this is my room. So what are you talking about? And he says, oh, when my wife is Anita, we don't sleep in the same room. It's not... That's okay. That's a different level there, but you understand. But that was so. This is a something we need to understand. This is a fundamental mitzvah in every Jewish home. There was a woman whose husband passed away in Israel, a Russian woman. It's a recent story. She passed away. She had no children. And she begged the Chevra Kadisha. She says, I need to eulogize my husband. I need to recite Kaddish. I need 10 people. So they gathered 10 people together. And she says, can I eulogize? It's not really common for a wife to eulogize her husband, particularly not in Israel. It's not something which is so common. She stands up and she says, I want you all to know something. We lived in Russia. And where we lived under communist rule, we were not anywhere near a mikvah. And for that reason, we never had children.
Oh, damn.
She said, this man dedicated his life to the observance of the Torah and foregone what a teenager, what a 20-year-old, what a 30-year-old, what a 40-year-old, etc., etc. Says, by the time we moved to Israel, I wasn't able to have children anymore. By the time I was able to go to a mikvah. That's a holy man. Someone who's ready to you can't. Where are you going to go to the mikvah? There is no mikvah. I saw written that Reb Moshe Feinstein had a gap between his two sons of over 8 years. Between Reb David and Reb Reuven Feinstein, the sons of Reb Moshe Feinstein. And he had said that was also, he lived in Russia. At the time, he was a rabbi, and they didn't have a mikvah. So for 8+ years, he has a gap of no children because his wife couldn't go to the mikvah. And his wife said, I know it was much more difficult for him than it was for me. His son said, I think it was much more difficult for my mother than it was for my father. But the idea that, yes, the physical relationship is a bond between a husband and wife. It's an emotional, it's a physical bond. It's a spiritual bond, contrary to what the world out there believes of intimacy, where it's become so cheap, it's become dirty, it's become something which has become unholy out there in the world. In Jewish life, it's very holy. We see that there are people who, look, the story the Talmud says here. This guy never slept with his wife because probably they didn't either have a mikveh there. I can guarantee you where they were, they didn't have a mikveh. This is something which is admirable. Indeed admirable. That people are ready to have such devotion to the word of Hashem. So the Talmud now continues and says, I don't have my glasses. The Talmud now continues and says an amazing thing. Pasach idach v'amar. So another sage started to speak, and he said, Maaseh v'amdu arba'im modios bedinar. In that town, there was an incident in which the price of 40 modios, which is a volume of grain, stood at a dinar. Nechsar hashar mudia achas, and then the rate dropped by 1 modia. A dinar purchased only 39 modios of grain. Ubatku, and they searched for the cause of this inflation. Umatsu avu bno shabo al naru morasa b'yom kippurim. Vehivium lebezdin v'siklum v'chazar shalom komo. They said, it can't be that the inflation comes for no reason. Inflation is coming because of a sin. So they investigated and they found that there was a father and a son who had slept with a woman who was committed to somebody else on Yom Kippur. And they brought them to court. And they stoned them to death. And then the rate went back to the proper position, to return to its proper value. Pasach idach v'amar, another sage started to speak, and he said, Maaseh ba'adam echad shenosan einav be'ishto legarsha. There was a man who decided he wanted to divorce his wife, but he had a problem. The nuptial was a little expensive. V'haisa ksubasa meruba, and a ksuba payment was great. So what is he going to do? So what did he do? Holach v'zimin es shushvinov. He invited his friends. Ve'echilam v'hishkon shikron v'hishkivon almita achas. He fed them and he gave them to drink. He intoxicated them and he laid them in his bed together with his wife. in one bed. Vehevi luban beitza vehetil b'neim. Then he brought the white of an egg and put it between them. Vehemid lohem edim ubala bezdin. He positioned witnesses to see them, and then he went to court. And this was sort of like a framing, right? He claimed in court that his wife had committed adultery, and as the Torah teaches us, a woman who commits adultery does not get the pay of her ketubah. There was one of the elderly sages there, one of the students of Shammai the elder, Ubaba ben Buta Shmo, and his name was Baba ben Buta. Amar Lehen, he said to them, Kach mikuplani mishamai azaken. This is the following lesson that I learned from my teacher Shammai the elder. Luban beitza soled min ha'or. The white of an egg contracts from exposure of fire. V'shichva zera doche min ha'or, and semen flows away from fire. Batku v'matzu kedvarav, and indeed they examined what was found, the evidence that was found on the sheets, the questionable substance, and they tested it, and they discovered that indeed it was the white of the egg in accordance with the words of Baba ben Buta. So they brought this man to court, and they gave him lashes, and they collected her ketubah appropriately from him. Having established that the residents of Sekania were righteous, the Gemara seeks to know why they were punished. So why were they punished? Amar le Abaye le Rabbi Yosef. Abaye said to Rabbi Yosef, Ume'achar dahavu tzadikim kulihai. Since they were so righteous, my time ianushu. Why were they punished? Amar le Rabbi Yosef said, Mishum delo iabul al Yerushalayim, because they did not appropriately mourn the destruction of the temple. Tichsiv, as the verse states, Simchu es Yerushalayim v'gilu ba kol ohavel sisu ita misos kol hamisablim olel. Glad in Jerusalem and rejoice with her, all those who love her. Be elated with her, all those who mourn for her. And he says that since they didn't properly mourn Jerusalem, they had this punishment that befell that town. So it's an interesting piece of Gemara, and it's an interesting story that we see here. I think that one of the important points to bring out is, we mentioned previously that we need to be intentional Jews. We need to be intentional Jews. Live with a purpose. To live as a Jew. People ask, one of the common questions that people ask is about death. What's going to be when I die? Can I be buried in a Jewish cemetery with a tattoo? Can I do this? Right? All of these questions that people ask. Why are people so obsessed with dying like a Jew when we can live like a Jew? We have to find a way to not just die like a Jew. When I die, then I'll make sure. No. Now, life, today. What change can I make to improve my Judaism? What change can I make today to live more intentional? Can I live with more vibrancy in my Judaism? We all have areas. Every single one of us, there's no exemption here. We all have a way in which we can improve. And we need to find what it is to improve our connection every day with the Almighty. For every person to know we have responsibilities, we have accountabilities. We see here there was accountability here. If someone does something that's against the Torah, they will be punished. Not necessarily from a Jewish court, from the Almighty. The Almighty has accounting of everything. Everything is written in the book. Everything. We are gifted with the opportunity to learn in our generation like we never have been able to ever before. Where we have podcasts, We have videos. You can learn we had a coffee machine that's been broken. It hasn't been working properly for a while. So I said, you know what? Today is the day. So I pull up the nifty YouTube app. I say, coffee machine's not working. I put in the details of the coffee machine, and there's like about 1,000, results, and it works. It was fixed. It's so easy. It's amazing. We live in a world that we can learn so much. It's so readily available. All we have to do is live with intention. I want to change. We're a new year. It's a new year. It's new opportunity. There's a story I want to share. Reb Yaakov Kamenetsky, who was a great, great sage, also a relative of mine. He once came into his yeshiva and asked the students on New Year's Day, so what are your resolutions? Then they're like, Rebbe, that's not our New Year. We have Rosh Hashanah. This is Gregorian calendar begins on January 1st, but that's not our calendar. He says, you mean everybody else in the country is taking upon themselves resolutions and we're not going to be inspired by that? We have to take upon ourselves a resolution to live with intention, to live with a purpose, with a meaning, with a focus. My dear friends, have an amazing Shabbos. Thank you so much.